How do you treat something like that? With care and attention, right? The utmost care and attention. And if you have any trouble believing me that we all have this inherent value and worth, and that we all come into the world this way, take a look at this. Oh, it makes me want to weep, honestly. So this is how we all enter the world, right? We were all like that. And you see that precious parent, I don't know whether it's a man or a woman, frankly, but you see how that person is carrying that child as if it's priceless, irreplaceable. And yet, unfortunately, we lose sight of it, right? What happens? What happens to us? We get traumatized is what happens. We get our dignity violated is what happens. And we become hardened inside. That warm, lovingness that we see here that we want to, the big little babies, you want to just squeeze them, you want to just love them. So what I'm proposing to all of us, and I do this everywhere I give a talk, is for us to be able to emotionally get back to this place. And actually, I think we should all wear little baby pictures around our necks. So we remember, oh my gosh, this is how we enter the world, all right? And here's a very interesting piece of research that I found. By the way, my favorite research literatures now, neuroscience and evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology. I don't know if any of you have had any experience with this, but I didn't. Of all the years that I have been studying human behavior and conflict in particular, I had not come across evolutionary biology and the significance that it has in terms of understanding who we are as human beings. Who we are as human beings. And it says that when you have a physical injury, all right, what happens? It registers in our brain in a very deep, ancient part of our brain called the limbic system. All right? I studied all this brain science. It is absolutely, friends, cutting edge if you want to understand human behavior. Go into the social neuroscience literature. It's astounding. So, you break an arm, right? You break a limb. Here's a picture of the area of the brain called the limbic system, and in particular it's called the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that gets highlighted when we have an injury, a physical injury. Now guess what? When somebody shames us, when someone humiliates us, when someone violates our dignity, research out of UCLA demonstrates that the same part of our brain gets triggered when we experience a wound to our dignity. Now, I don't know about you, but that floored me when I found this out. Because this is, you know how people say, oh, emotional issues, touchy-feely stuff, just get over it, right? Well, friends, we don't just get over it. These things linger. They linger inside us, and they stockpile. But yet, guess what? There's no 911 call. I don't know if you have that here in Turkey. The special emergency number when you've been injured or when something bad happens. There's no emergency room that we go to when someone violates our dignity. But yet, it has the same impact. And you just think about that juxtaposition, that physically we are very careful to rush. I mean, even think of soldiers on the field. There's the Red Cross, everybody, international recognition of the fact that you let the Red Cross go through when there's wounded people on the battlefield. But what happens when our dignity is wounded? Just something to think about. All right, now, one of my heroes, and they happen to be South African for some reason, but one of the other bits of information that I want to impart to you is that this I believe to be true, which is that our dignity can be assaulted, it can be trampled upon, It can be wounded, but our dignity can never be taken away from us. And this is the profound truth that I learned from Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela spent, as you all know, most of you, I'm sure you know, that he spent 27 years in Robben Island. 27 years. When he first entered the prison, he did a very careful watch of what happened, what the guards were doing to the prisoners. And at the end of the first day, he decided, okay, I'm going to be okay here. I'm going to be all right. Well, why did he decide that? He said, because I recognized that what the guards were trying to do was strip people of their dignity. And when I realized that, I knew that because my dignity was in my hands only, I could have it hurt, I could have it injured, but at the end of the day, no one but me is in charge of my dignity. And you know, this is a very important finding, I think, for all of us, because if you were anything like me, you know, I came into this research on dignity thinking, well, wait a minute, somebody took my dignity away from me. You know, I need to restore it, I need to get it back. But the fact is, it's always there. But what is so painful and what is so destabilizing, because it can knock us right off our feet, are these deep injuries to our dignity. So what we have to do, all of us, is figure out ways. I mean, there's many things we have to do, but number one, we have to learn how to heal from them. We have to know what to do. And I'm telling you, frankly, keeping it inside is the worst thing you can do for your dignity when it's been wounded. You need to talk to people. You need to go. You need to express to your friends, tell your story about what happened. There's some amazing work being done in Boston. This wonderful woman, Judith Herman, she wrote a book a long time ago called Trauma and Recovery. And she told us what we had to do. We had to create a safe space where people can feel comfortable talking about these dignity issues. And then we tell our story. Tell our story about what happened. Without being challenged, without having to defend it, to just sit and have other witnesses, other human beings witness what we went through and to say to them, I'm really sorry. Nobody should have had to go through what you went through. Simple stuff. And by the way, you know, I have like 5 degrees or something, and I went searching for the answers for all of these issues about human behavior and what gets us stuck. I went intellectually into all of this. But at the end of the day, folks, this is not an intellectual issue. This is about increasing our capacity to handle our emotional worlds on the inside. All right? And this guy was such an inspiration to me when he said, nobody can take my dignity away. So our challenge, all of us, is to figure out ways to recognize when we've been injured, heal from that, share our stories with other people, and then, I mean, this is our leadership challenge, is to figure out what to do about it. Is to figure out how to model this dignified behavior in our lives. And so what does it mean? What does it mean to honor somebody's dignity? And I've come up with 10 ways. A lot of this, the first four of these came from Professor Kelman's work and Professor John Burton's work in the human needs theory. But first of all, it's just accepting our identity. Oh, by the way, Jasmine, yeah, and I have a handout that Jasmine is going to give you. She'll pass around with a much more detail than what I'm going to say now, so that you can take it home and take a look at it. But first and foremost, identity is so important to us. And as President Inan was saying earlier, that accepting this diversity, accepting our differences is absolutely crucial. And to accept the fact that if somebody lives their lives in a different way and has no control over what that identity is, that is like the most painful violation of our dignity, is to treat us as if we're inferior or a second-class citizen. So the acceptance of identity is absolutely critical. And yet, as important as identity and difference is, and creating a sense of respect for each other's differences, that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is to transcend, to go, and this is my conviction. You can challenge me if you want. But my conviction is that if we leave each other at the level of our differences, we're not going to come to this place where we have a mutual recognition of our shared human identity. That's where we're headed, all right? Honoring the diversity is critical. It's not the last step. It's the penultimate step, but it's not the last. Recognition. We all yearn to be recognized for what we've done, what our experiences have been. Acknowledgement is a huge one, folks. If you want to take one single thing away from this, and you want to increase your dignity skills, when somebody comes up to you and talks to you about, especially somebody you might disagree with, if one magical tool is to acknowledge that the other person feels the way he or she does. Acknowledgement has such power behind it. You don't have to agree, but you just acknowledge. All right, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I have more than I want to say about other things. But inclusion, by the way, some of the research that I was explaining from UCLA about what happens when people feel when they're experiencing the wound of their dignity in the same place in their brain as a physical one. Exclusion, people have found, the research has shown, is one of the most painful injuries to our dignity. Being left out of something, being excluded from something that we feel is important to us. Safety, of course, safety. You don't want to be physically harmed. But the dignity model focuses more on psychological safety. Feeling safe from being humiliated, safe from being shamed, safe to be who you are, to speak up in a way that you feel you can do without being what's the word? Without retribution. Okay. So fairness. Well, everybody knows fairness. I mention this always, that if you see a little kid whose parents, two little kids, the mother or the father is giving them candy, first thing they do, did I get the same amount as her? Is it equal amount? Fairness is in our gut. Fairness is deep in our bones. Independence, well, this is the opposite of freedom. Understanding, well, we know what it's like to be misunderstood. Benefit of the doubt, this is one people have a lot of trouble with. Because the dignity model suggests that we give people the benefit of the doubt before and try to withhold judgments. Especially, this is crucial with prejudice reduction. Absolutely crucial that you enter into a conversation with someone and you leave behind all your previous thinking about this particular identity group or that particular identity group. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is really, and these aren't in any particular order of priority, frankly. Accountability. Well, I don't know if you're anything like me. I hate apologizing. I hate telling people that I made a mistake when I've done something wrong. But this is another very tough one. But without the ability to take responsibility for the harm that we've caused other people, for violating their dignity, we're not going to see any hope of healing or reconciliation. It's just not going to happen. So the other thing I found, when I told you that my favorite literature was evolutionary psychology, I found, and this was groundbreaking to me, I found that, how we all know about fight and flight, that we have these survival instincts that we're hardwired with, we come into the world with, it is part of our evolutionary legacy, that our early ancestors had this need, obviously, to stay alive and to survive. And so when we feel threatened as human beings, we've taken on this legacy. When we feel threatened, whether it's physically or psychologically, we either fight or flee. All right? Those are the ones that most people know. But when I did my research, I discovered that there are at least 10 other of these hardwired instincts that we have. Like, for example, everybody wants to save face. There is an instinct within us that when we get exposed for doing something wrong, there's an instinct to try to cover up, to deceive. I mean, we have so many examples of this in the United States. we just finished a trial. Senator John Edwards, had a child out of wedlock while his wife was dying of cancer, and he tried to cover up the whole thing. We in the U.S. have so many examples of how these politicians try to save face and not stand up to the truth.